There is a watch brand that almost nobody outside of Switzerland had heard of before 1972. A company that had spent over a century making movements for other people's watches, content to exist in the shadows of the industry it helped build. Then one night, a designer sketched something on a napkin that would change the entire concept of luxury forever. And the watch that came from that napkin sketch is now worth more than most people's retirement accounts. We are talking about prices that start at $25,000 and climb without any obvious ceiling. Celebrities wear them. Athletes collect them. Serious collectors put their names on waiting lists they know will take years. This is Audemars Piguet, and the story of how a small family workshop in a remote Swiss valley became one of the most coveted watch brands on the planet reveals everything about craftsmanship, exclusivity, and what it actually means to make something that lasts forever.
Audemars Piguet has built a rich history of innovation and craftsmanship. Fast forward to today, and the brand is renowned for its complex mechanical movements, exquisite designs, and limited production runs. You could say that each watch is a collector's item, and you wouldn't be wrong.
To understand Audemars Piguet, you have to understand where they came from. Not just the history, but the geography. The brand was founded in 1875 in Le Brassus, a tiny village in the Valley de Joux in Switzerland. This is not a place most people have ever heard of. It is remote, cold for most of the year, and for centuries had almost no industry at all. The valleys were too harsh for farming and too isolated for trade. So the people who lived there did what isolated people with long winters and idle hands tend to do. They made things. Extraordinarily precise, extraordinarily complicated things. The watchmakers of the Valley de Joux became famous throughout Switzerland and eventually throughout the world for their ability to produce the most complex mechanical movements ever attempted. Tourbillons, perpetual calendars, minute repeaters, split-seconds chronographs. These were complications that required years of training to understand and months to assemble. And the Valley produced generations of craftsmen who could do all of them. Jules Louis Audemars and Edward Auguste Piguet were both from this world. They had grown up surrounded by watchmaking and understood it at a level most people never reach. When they founded their company in 1875, they weren't starting from scratch. They were inheriting centuries of accumulated knowledge and applying it with a focus and ambition that set them apart immediately. From the very beginning, Audemars Piguet was obsessed with complications, not just any complications, but the hardest ones. In 1882, just 7 years after founding the company, they produced a pocket watch combining a minute repeater, a perpetual calendar, and a chronograph all in a single movement. This was extraordinarily difficult to achieve. Most watchmakers would have been proud to produce just one of those complications. Audemars Piguet put all three together like it was a challenge they had set for themselves just to prove they could.
This is the watch we've been looking for decades. And this is the only AP watch known up to today that has the night sky, the sidereal time, the 24 hours plus the minutes of sidereal time, the equation of time.
This attitude, this absolute refusal to take the easy route, defined everything the brand would do for the next 150 years. For most of their early existence, though, Audemars Piguet was not a brand that most people would recognize. They were a movement maker, a supplier. They created the mechanical hearts that other watch companies put into their own cases and sold under their own names. The work was extraordinary. The recognition was almost non-existent. If you had walked into a watch shop in 1960 and asked for an Audemars Piguet, the salesperson would have looked at you with genuine confusion. That shift changed everything, and it came from one man, one idea, and one dinner that almost didn't happen. His name was Gerald Gente, and in the early 1970s, he was the most important watch designer in the world, though almost nobody outside the industry knew his name. Gente had already designed icons for Omega and IWC, watches that had become legends in their own right. He had a gift for seeing what a watch should look like before it existed, for finding the form that matched the function so perfectly that the result felt inevitable. In 1971, Audemars Piguet approached Gente at a trade dinner with an essentially impossible challenge: a new watch ready for the Basel Fair the following year. The timeline was unreasonable. A year was not enough time to design and produce a serious luxury watch. And yet Genta took the commission home and, according to the story he told many times afterward, sketched the entire design in a single night and delivered it the next morning. What he drew was something nobody had ever seen before. A luxury sports watch in stainless steel with an integrated bracelet. Now, that doesn't sound radical until you understand what it meant in 1972. Luxury watches were made from gold or platinum. They had separate bracelets or leather straps, and they were dress watches meant for formal occasions. Stainless steel was the material of tool watches and professional instruments. It was what you made dive watches and pilot watches from. It was not what you made luxury watches from. The idea of charging a luxury price for a steel watch was considered somewhere between audacious and insane. Genta didn't care. The design had an octagonal bezel secured by 8 exposed hexagonal screws. The case and bracelet flowed together as one continuous integrated piece, something that had never really been done before at this level. The dial had a distinctive tapisserie pattern, a small geometric texture that caught light differently from every angle. He called it the Royal Oak.
And if there's a watch that doesn't need an introduction, it's definitely the Royal Oak. It's one of the best known, if not the best known, luxury watches in the world. The first stainless steel luxury sports watch ever when it was introduced in 1972, and the forefather of an entire genre of watches without which modern watchmaking would not be what it is today.
When it debuted at Basel in 1972 at a price of approximately $3,000, which was several times more expensive than most gold watches of the time, the reaction was genuinely split. Some people thought it was a masterpiece. Others thought Audemars Piguet had completely lost their minds. Who would pay that much money for a steel watch? Quite a lot of people, it turned out. The Royal Oak sold. And over the following years, something remarkable happened. The watch built a reputation not just as a luxury item, but as a genuine design icon. Sporty but refined. Industrial but beautiful. It wore equally well with a suit and with casual clothes, and it had those 8 screws on the bezel that gave it a face, a character, something to recognize from across the room. But here is what made Audemars Piguet different from almost every other luxury brand in the world. They didn't chase the Royal Oak's success. They didn't immediately produce 50 variations and spin-offs to capitalize on the attention. They kept making complicated movements. They kept working in Le Brassus, and they kept the company family-owned and independent, which it remains to this day, over 150 years after it was founded. Almost every other major Swiss watch brand has been absorbed into one of the large conglomerates. Audemars Piguet has never been sold, never been merged, never been taken over by a group more interested in financial returns than in the quality of the movements they produce. This independence shapes everything about how they operate. They are not accountable to shareholders who want to see production volumes increase. They are not under pressure to release a new model every year to justify marketing spend. They can take years to develop a new complication because there is nobody in a boardroom asking why it is taking so long. And they maintain production of around 50,000 watches per year. For context, Rolex produces approximately 1 million. At 50,000 watches annually, Audemars Piguet is not competing on volume at all. Every watch they make is a deliberate, considered object. The Royal Oak is still made essentially the same way today. The 8 screws are still there. The tapisserie dial is still there. The alternating polishes on the case are still done by hand by craftsmen who spend years learning how to create that specific visual effect. And a new Royal Oak today costs somewhere between $25,000 and $40,000 depending on the configuration. Which raises the obvious question, what exactly are you paying for? At its core, it comes down to 2 things: the movement inside and the finishing on the outside. An Audemars Piguet movement is built and decorated to a standard you simply cannot find in most watches at any price. Every single edge of every gear and plate and bridge has been chamfered and polished by hand. This process, called anglage in French, serves no functional purpose whatsoever. The movement would work identically without it, but it transforms the interior from a collection of functional components into something that looks like it belongs in a museum. And this is done whether or not you ever open the case back, whether or not you ever look inside. Because Audemars Piguet's position is that quality is not determined by what is visible, but by what is done regardless of whether anyone will ever see it. The Royal Oak Offshore, introduced in 1993, tells a different story and is worth mentioning separately. If the original Royal Oak was considered radical for being a luxury steel sports watch, the Offshore was considered by many fans to be essentially a betrayal. The case got bigger, much bigger. Rubber elements appeared. The styling became more aggressive. Purists were brutal in their criticism. They called it the Beast. They said it ruined the clean lines of Genta's original. They said it was vulgar. But again, something unexpected happened. The Offshore sold extraordinarily well to exactly the audience it was aimed at. Athletes and celebrities embraced it. The watch that purists hated became a cultural touchstone for a generation of newly successful people who wanted something that matched their energy. What Audemars Piguet understood was that the Offshore wasn't replacing the original. It was extending the family into a different conversation. Both made to the same standard internally, regardless of how different they look externally. Getting a Royal Oak from an authorized dealer is, in many cases, essentially impossible if you walk in off the street today. The most desirable references have waiting lists of years. This scarcity is not manufactured in the way that some brands manufacture it. Audemars Piguet genuinely cannot make more watches without compromising quality, and they are not willing to do that. The secondary market reflects this reality. A Royal Oak retailing for $30,000 might sell at auction for $60,000 or more, depending on the reference. Some rare configurations sell for multiples of retail. But the watch has become not just an object of desire, but a genuine store of value. People buy Royal Oaks the way people buy art or rare bottles of wine, not necessarily to wear them, but as objects of appreciation that happen to hold and sometimes grow their worth over time. What distinguishes Audemars Piguet most clearly is longevity. The company that Jules Louis Audemars and Edward Auguste Piguet started in a remote Swiss valley in 1875 is still making watches in that same valley today. The craftsmen who learned their skills from older craftsmen, who learned from older craftsmen, who learned from the founders themselves. That chain is unbroken. When you buy an Audemars Piguet, you are not just buying a watch. You are buying a link in a chain of craftsmanship that goes back to a time before cars existed, before electricity was common, before the world understood what precision manufacturing even meant. You cannot start a new company tomorrow and claim 150 years of continuous watchmaking tradition in the same valley. That history either exists or it does not. For Audemars Piguet, it exists in a way that almost no other company in any industry can claim. So, is a Royal Oak worth $30,000? The rational answer is no. A Casio will tell time more accurately. A smartphone will do everything else. But that is the wrong question entirely. The right question is whether the craft, the history, the design, and the object itself is worth that to the person considering buying it. For collectors who understand what goes into making these watches, who appreciate the decades of skill that went into the hands assembling the movement, the Royal Oak is not an expensive watch. It is an inexpensive way to own a piece of something that took 150 years to create. That is why Audemars Piguet is not just a watch company. It is one of the last remaining examples of what happens when a small group of extraordinarily skilled people commit to doing one thing at the highest possible level and simply refuse to stop. For 150 years and counting. Have you ever had the chance to see or wear an Audemars Piguet in person? Does the Royal Oak live up to its reputation? Let us know in the comments below, and we will see you in the next one.